What I'm going to do today is hone in on one aspect of nonlinear dieting, and that specific area is diet breaks. So let's define diet breaks. Diet break is typically defined as a 1 to 2 week or 7 to 14 day break from a diet. So a client is dieting for a few weeks or a few months, and then they purposefully stop dieting, increase their calories, typically back to maintenance calories, or in the research, back to pre-dieting maintenance calories, with the intention of then going back on the diet after 7 to 14, 1 to 2 weeks later. Here's another picture of what a diet break is not. So you can look on this axis, there's time at the bottom, and with continuous dieting, you're constantly in a caloric deficit, week after week after week, and month after month after month, never a break from dieting. So that is the opposite of what a diet break is. And here's a visual representation of what a diet break is. So you can see somebody's dieting, and then they take a break, and then they diet again, and then they take another break. And this is actually an overview of the study that we published in my lab, and I'll share that with you later. I'll actually do a brief summary of this. And this study is also free. It's free. It's open access. So I'll tell you how you can find that when we're done as well. The reason that diet breaks initially in the research literature were positioned or were investigated was to improve weight loss efficiency. Now, essentially, weight loss efficiency is the continual success of losing body weight or body fat while in a caloric deficit. The opposite of weight loss efficiency is what we often experience. Somebody's in a caloric deficit and they lose more weight initially, and then as time goes on, they keep losing less and less body weight. So here's a graphical representation of this. So you can see here in this hypothetical example, this is in pounds, the first week, over 2 pounds. Now the second week, less than a pound. Third week, about a half a pound. Fourth week. So you can see here, this is not weight loss efficiency. The longer one diets, the less and less body weight they're losing without changing anything. Historically, people have attributed that the cause for this slowing down of weight is because of adaptive thermogenesis. And I know we've talked about this before. We have this in the course. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, adaptive thermogenesis is when your metabolism slows down more than what we think it should relative to weight loss, so that what used to be a caloric deficit is now no longer a caloric deficit. So if you used to be, let's say, dieting by 500 calories, after a few months, that caloric deficit may only be like 200 calories because your metabolism has slowed down. This is a picture of 100% weight loss efficiency. So let's assume in this example that the person is reducing their calories by 25% below maintenance calories. And in the first week, they lose a pound of body fat. The second week, a pound of body fat. The third week, a pound of body fat. And again, as you can see in my example, the fourth week, a pound of body fat. So there's never a slowing down of fat loss with the same caloric deficit. This is 100% weight loss efficiency. Now, again, this doesn't exist in the real world, or very rarely does this exist. And what I'm going to do now is go over 4 different studies. 2 of them are very recent, like published within the last year or almost the last year. And this one is actually one of the oldest diet break studies. This one is nearly 20 years old, or actually it is 20 years old. And nobody really refers to this as a diet break study, but that's what I call it, because as you'll see here in a minute, that is what it is. It's what I call the original diet break study. what the researchers had was they had people, males and females, with obesity in this study. And what they wanted to determine is what happens when you fail from a diet. So this study is also fairly humorous in the sense that, as we're going to learn, what they wanted to study, they failed at. They weren't able to actually study what they wanted to study. So their goal was, at least at the time, they understood that everybody fails on a diet after a period of time. What they wanted to investigate was what happens right when they fail. Like, why are they failing? And why are people not able to get back on their diet once they fail? So the way that they went about this was they purposefully inserted diet breaks into the study design. And the reason they did this was because they thought, okay, once we give these subjects diet breaks, they're not going to be able to get back on the diet, just like what happens in real life. And we'll study what's going on psychologically. We'll study what's going on a little bit physiologically as to why they had a relapse, like why they can't get on and start dieting again and start losing weight again. So what they did, they had these male and female subjects based on their body weight going into this study. They assigned them to either a 1,000-calorie diet or a 1,500-calorie diet. And what they gave them, they said, during this study, we're going to give you a list of foods that you may not eat when you're on the diet break portion of the study. So they had a list of 13 forbidden foods. Also during the study, they slowly increase the exercise that the subjects were doing. And this was just cardio. And they wanted this to get up to about 2.5 hours per week. So here were the study groups. The first group, you could call that the control group. You'll notice that the subjects never took a diet break. This is just 20 straight weeks of continuous dieting. The second group, you'll notice, they had a long 6-week diet break right in the middle of the 20-week study. So they dieted for 6 weeks. Then the researchers had a 6-week diet break, and then they had them diet for 6 more weeks or 7 more weeks. And then the third group, this was the short diet break group. This is 2 weeks of diet breaks spread over the course of the study, so that at the end of the study, there were 6 weeks of diet breaks, just like in the other group. Now, during these diet breaks, again, the researchers inserted these because this was meant to mimic a lapse in dieting, and they wanted to learn what would happen when the subjects tried to go back on their diets, presumably failing, like just not being able to get back on the diet and losing more weight. During the diet breaks, the subjects were told to not monitor their behavior. Don't weigh yourself. And they purposefully said, you know, that list of 13 foods that we said you can't eat from during the diet? Well, now eat from that list. And also, if you go back to your pre-study habits with exercise, if you weren't doing any exercise, then go back to that. And that's what most subjects were. They were mostly sedentary going into the study. So here were the results of this study. And if you look at just look at the end of the study. So actually look at the beginning, far left, and end. Over the 20 weeks, regardless of which group, and I'll give you the actual weight loss numbers in a second, there essentially was no difference in the amounts of weight loss between the groups. The top line was the short diet break group. And when you see those dashed lines, those were the 2-week diet break periods. So they gained a little bit of weight on the first, a little bit of weight on the second. And then on the third diet break, they actually lost a little bit of weight. The middle line with what looked like the diamonds to me, there was a long 6-week diet break in the middle of this. And during that period, the subjects didn't gain any weight. And then the bottom figure, the bottom part of the figure with the triangles, that was the group that never took a diet break at all. Now, the reason these results were essentially a failure of what the researchers thought would happen. What they thought would happen is that these diet breaks would cause these subjects to not be able to lose more weight after they were over. They thought it would completely derail their dieting success. And here are the actual numbers, and these are in kilograms, the actual weight loss results. And we'll notice that they all lost between 7 and 8 kilograms of body weight during these 20 weeks. Now, unfortunately, they didn't assess body composition. So I'm not able to give you those numbers. But the premise here remains, they were surprised. They wanted to study failing a diet. They thought that by telling subjects, take a break from the diet, go back to eating foods that you aren't allowed to eat, they thought that that would cause them to not be able to lose more weight. But as you can see here, and in the figure, that's not what happened. Essentially, the diet breaks didn't have any effect. So the researchers were kind of forced to change what they were going to study and report on. So they thought they were going to report on failing diets and what may cause that. And they changed it to, as we noticed, a diet break study, which is kind of funny. So here were some statements of the researchers in response to what they found. And essentially, again, they're making the point for, I would say, the first time in the diet break research literature that diet breaks seem to work, that they don't cause any harm, and that they may be a good strategy during vacation periods or holiday periods when people tend to gain weight.